Welcome to One Room at a Time. I'm your host, Atticus LeBlanc, founder and CEO of PadSplit, the country's largest co-living marketplace. I've spent more than 2 decades in affordable housing as a property owner, developer, and now an entrepreneur. This show brings together some of the brightest minds in housing to talk about how we can create real solutions to solve the housing crisis. Joining me today is Mathias Korder, co-founder and CEO of Baselane. Mathias leads one of the fastest growing financial platforms purpose-built for real estate investors. Baselane combines banking, bookkeeping, rent collection, and tax tools into a single system, helping over 50,000 investors manage over $3 billion in transactions each year. Before founding Baselane, Mathias was a principal at the Boston Consulting Group in New York, where he advised some of the largest financial institutions. With a company at the intersection of finance, technology, and real estate, Mathias and Baselane are helping operators scale efficiently. Mathias, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Excited to share a little bit more about Baselane and what we're doing for real estate investors. I think we're very much just getting started on this journey. There's I think 14 million real estate investors across the United States. Very early innings with 50,000 customers. At Baselane today. So excited to share more with your audience and have folks learn more about Baselane and how it can help them become better investors.
Love it. Well, yeah, and apologies if my voice seems a little bit croaky. I think, finally getting over about a week-long cold. So hopefully I don't transmit anything over the airwaves to any of our audience. But Mathias, yeah, so you built a career in finance and consulting, and know a number of folks from BCG. Although I was never at least a real consultant in any way. But now prop tech. And so, yeah, just curious for our listeners, if you can walk through your background a bit and what led you to create Baselane to begin with.
Yeah, 100%. So I actually started my career working in investment management at Morgan Stanley. So out of college, I moved to New York and worked at Morgan Stanley. Today, I think one of the largest asset managers in the United States with over like $10 trillion in AUM. But I think I learned, all the different asset classes. There's equity, there's fixed income, there's obviously real estate, other hard assets, commodities. And you learned across, how do you manage different asset allocation, risk reward, like market volatility, understanding, how interest rates work and how they impact the different asset classes. And that was a fantastic, 4-year, crash course into understanding kind of the whole world of financial services, I think, which is very, very core to kind of, a lot of the things that I make decisions on today. And then BCG was very opposite of that. It was kind of, consulting firm where you're going deep into the operations of how a financial service company works, right? The operations, the risk, the compliance, the innovation that's happening behind the scenes. So 2 very different lenses. At Morgan Stanley, actually, I was providing service to customers, right? So, I was a service provider, and you learn a lot about how you provide services when you are a financial service company, right? There's so much trust that goes with that. The advice that you give, impacts the way, people make decisions which are around their livelihood. So it was a very, very important piece to kind of how I learned about financial services. What I loved about BCG, though, was that you really were in deep into how, financial services were operating. And I was lucky to actually help build a few very innovative banking products while I was at BCG for some of the largest banks and financial service providers here in the US. That's actually where I got the initial idea to build Baselane, right? I was helping actually build an SMB banking platform, and there were so many different types of SMBs, whether you're an e-commerce business, a legal practice, a logistics provider, or a real estate investor. You actually need different things from your bank, from the way you do bookkeeping, from each of them, right? Each business is so unique. I owned a few investment properties in Florida, and still didn't have the full complexity as a scaled investor, but they were very present, and it was very clear that with the innovation across many different things, you were able to go and build things with not crazy amount of capital, not crazy amount of time to go build something. And 6 years ago, we got started on building this vision of being the leading bank and bookkeeping platform, just for individual real estate investors. And so, launched a few years after kind of, starting that vision, and now have, 50,000 customers at Baselane, and we're on track to even, probably double the amount of customers we have on our platform this year alone.
What was the core problem that you saw that you were like, aha, this is it?
There was a few. I think the first main problem I saw was that, financial services in the way that it was presented across either, personal banking or SME banking wasn't really built for real estate investors. Real estate investors had many unique things across kind of the way they manage their finances. They have very unique cash flow, right? Our customers have, monthly recurring rent, very specific expenses. Many have, two or three doors. Some of them have 20 doors or 20 rooms.
Mhm.
And you need to be able to organize those funds in the right way. You need to be able to kind of have a system where you understand what is the difference between, just cash flow and actually profits. You need to be able to actually save for, maintenance in the future or for a future investment you want to make, right? There's a lot of things in the way you manage your money. Then, when you actually go and file for tax, there's actually a very unique tax code that the real estate investors have to follow. And there's specific tax reports they need to follow. And, for every property you have, you need to have, a Schedule E. And most of the bookkeeping tools that exist today are not built for real estate. They're built for small businesses, right? And, real estate investors have multiple locations. So if you want to use QuickBooks, you need to pay for a very expensive version of QuickBooks that allows for multiple
Sure.
locations. And it was, not built even for investors, but they were built for CPAs. And so we said, like, how can we simplify this and actually make it really around what our customers need, right? And
Were you a real estate investor, Matthias, or like
yeah, I have two properties in Florida,
Okay.
recent that I had been renting out for 10 years. And I think another piece that I had is a lot of things were commingled, right? I had my personal bank account and some things were commingled there. I had like an Excel sheet where I was tracking a lot of other elements of it. Rent collection was not automated at all. It was a very manual process. And so if you kind of summed up the collection of tools and systems that I'd put in place, there was probably like 7 different things I was using to manage, two properties.
Mhm.
And it obviously was, taking up a lot of time. There was probably tons of things that were inaccurate with the way that I managed my properties. Um, there was poor decisions being made because I didn't have, the right insights when I needed them, right? If I needed to go and understand, how these properties were performing, maybe I would have made decisions around, do I want to keep these? Do I want to keep adding more in the area? Do I want to increase rents? Is there opportunities for me to actually kind of reduce costs? Right? There was a lot of things I didn't have visibility into, right? Because I was actually just doing this more for, I need to go file taxes versus actually treating this like a real investment, right? And so there
Sure.
was a lot of elements that were there.
What have been some of the challenges that, or maybe the unexpected things that you've seen as you've been building this out? Because you guys have been at this for a while. Uh,
Yeah.
what have been the surprises for you as you've been building that either investors need or that you've had to deploy just to adapt?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, when we started this business, we were very focused on, long-term, renters, and we focused on kind of a certain size of renter, and we realized there's actually such a broad differentiation across different types of investors, different strategies,
Mhm.
and so we've had to build actually Baselane to work in a broader context, right? Whether you're renting a room, whether you're doing short-term, doing
Sure.
mid-term, doing long-term, folks are doing fix and flip. Some folks have a mix of residential and commercial. Folks have been doing this for 20 years, and they have 25 properties, and they're at scale of where they want to be, or there's someone that's just getting started, and they have, one property, but they want to be able to get to 10 doors, right? And
Mhm.
so there's so many different stages, different strategies. Folks that are managing something that is, a 10-minute drive from their home, or folks that are managing, properties that are, hours away. And so, all of this has taken a lot of shape in many different forms. One, we've kind of started to build Baselane so that it works for someone that is, short term, mid-term, long term. Someone that is just renting, a room. Someone that has very limited experience, and actually they want a tool that actually educates them as they go through the process. And so when you come into Baselane and, the first thing you want to do is open a bank account, we actually open a bundle based on the type of strategy you may have. So you'll get an
Mm.
account for a security deposit, for example, if you're doing long-term rentals. You get an account for kind of savings for profit, savings for kind of maintenance, and, drive education through the product as well.
Is it mostly mom and pop investors or kind of smaller scale investors?
Yeah, I would say if you look at the landscape across the United States, the vast majority of individual real estate investors, own less than 5 properties.
Sure.
I would say we definitely capture those customers, but we also capture many customers that have 11 plus stores as well, right?
Okay.
And I think as you scale, the complexity multiplies quite quickly. And so a platform like Baselane that is more of a system that drives automation, it drives insights, it drives clarity, is very essential for someone that has obviously gotten to that scale.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about my own portfolio and it's a mess.
Yeah,
I'll just say it like that, but we're in a lot of different things. Of course, I started PadSplit, but before that, we had room rentals of our own. We've got commercial, long-term rental. We're not really in the vacation rental space at all, but there's a lot of different just strategies, I would say. And I'm thinking in a number of those cases, whenever we've gone to get loans, there's this requirement that the deposit relationship transfer to whatever bank is financing the loan. How do you guys run into that with your core customer, and how do you work through that or just accommodate those scenarios?
yeah, that's a great question. What's quite interesting if you look at kind of where real estate investors are getting loans, there's actually many different types of loans. And so there are loans that are, bank loans where banks have specific covenants where you have to kind of
Mhm.
keep certain assets at those banks. And for those customers, what we do is say, Baseline can be your operating account. Uh, the operating account is where your transactions are flowing through. Our AI is automatically tagging all those transactions so that they're actually tagged to the right tax category, to the right property. You get full visibility across your cash flow. You can still connect, using, the connection we have to Plaid. You can connect your existing bank relationship, and every quarter, if you want to disperse, profits back, to that bank account, you can, so that you still maintain those covenants. But most of the time, those banks, whether they're kind of a large, national bank, a regional bank, or community bank, they don't have any flavor of real estate built into them, right? Maybe there's someone that can
Sure.
answer, can answer something on a phone, but they aren't banks built for real estate investors. And so we work with them, but actually, when we see the vast majority of real estate investors, many times are getting conforming loans, and these are not necessarily attached to any bank, right? They may be getting a DSCR loan as well. So there's actually a smaller percentage of loans and lending that is actually coming directly from a bank.
Is the right way to think about Baseline then almost kind of like an operating system behind the scenes for real estate investors where you just have greater visibility into your properties and cash flows so that you can actually asset manage them in a way that a larger financial institution might want to. Is that the right way to think about it, or is that
Yeah, I
maybe too
think
simplistic?
that is a good way of thinking about it. I think the world that we encompass is from holding your money all the way to delivering you like clear insights and
Mhm.
confidence around your money. Right? We're not a property management platform. We don't focus on communicating, leasing, marketing. We don't focus on tenant screening, the lease documents. That is what we call property management. We really
Sure.
focus on the financial management of the real estate investment process. And so, like my goal is, can I give full clarity to an investor in a highly automated, time-saving way, so that you have time to go to whatever is more valuable, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's finding the next property or having a Friday afternoon with your children.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I certainly know most of the real estate investors I talk to are looking for the latter,
yeah,
whether it's their children or their loved ones, generally, or even just by themselves, vacationing. It seems to be the major draw to the real estate industry.
yep,
And so, like, how does how does Baselane get people closer to that point?
yeah.
Like, just very explicitly.
I think the way that we structure our bank accounts is actually so different than how you would structure them going into just traditional bank account.
Mhm.
Like we will actually open up all of these accounts based on the different needs, right? For every property, for every listing you may have. And then there's automation built into that account so that every transaction that's flowing through is automatically tagged.
Mm.
And they're tagged to the right property and they're tagged to the right tax category.
So you're telling me I
Um,
don't have to spend 6 hours, every month in QuickBooks. Is that
exactly.
the
You will
gist?
spend
Okay.
zero time. Like,
Got
we,
it.
we do suggest you go in and you can, we have a column in our kind of bookkeeping transaction where you say like, I reviewed this. So it's like reviewed. And, maybe you
Yep.
have, let's say, 20 transactions that month, you've gone and reviewed them, and that took you, 5 minutes.
Sure.
And then as you actually build more confidence, actually see all the power it does, like maybe the reviews are even quicker
I love that.
than that. And so with that, then you're also getting very clean reporting, whether it's specific real estate reports, or you want to see specific financial reports like P&L, or you need to see a balance sheet. All of these things are fully automated. And I think beyond the automation, it's also around the accuracy. I think when you're doing things manually, there's tons of areas for mistakes, or tons of gaps where you might have missed
Sure.
an expense, right? And so it's super important to have this process versus going in this crazy manual reconciliation process that we see so often.
Yeah, no
Uh,
doubt.
yeah,
No doubt. Well, you had mentioned rooms earlier. Let the record show that
yeah,
Matthias mentioned rooms. I did not for the first time, I think, in this podcast.
yeah,
Uh, and yeah, then you guys had reached out to me, gosh, maybe 2 years ago or so at this
yeah.
point. And why? Like, why? I'd be curious to know from your perspective. Did did you see an opportunity in the shared housing or rent by the room space? And how does Baselane specifically treat those types of situations different? Since I imagine the income flow is a lot different. Certainly not just
Yeah.
straightforward monthly income the way that it would be, or consistent payments. So
Yeah.
yeah, curious to know, like, from your perspective, how that happened and why.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I look at it, rooms, it's a different strategy, and maybe, real estate investors have, we know investors that have multiple strategies, and I think it's just
Mhm.
one more important strategy to the real estate approach. And just because it's a room, not a property, I think the complexity isn't any different. And
That's a great point.
I think, you may have, 5, 10 rooms that you're renting out, or you may have, 5 properties. And I would actually argue that the complexity of rooms is actually maybe even higher, because the turnaround is higher. And
Sure.
so there's, more expenses, there's more things to do. And so you need a system that actually allows you to be able to manage that, at scale, right? I think it's very similar to what we see when we have, short-term rental customers, where, after 2, 3 doors, like, the complexity is actually already quite high. If you have 2, 3 properties, the complexity is, still somewhat manageable, right? And
Mhm.
it's because the turnaround and all the things that happen with that. And so I think, from a bookkeeping place, there's many more expenses, right?
Sure.
Much more reconciliation than you've done. So if you can have automation, it's much better. On the payment side as well, it's not just every month, right? It's, payments that are coming in at different moments in time. So that requires different things, right? You're going to have to build probably a better cash flow buffer than if you have, you know, timely payments that are coming in on a monthly basis. How can you automate payments so you're not having to chase things? Like, it's easier if I know I have to chase things at the end of the month. Very clear who's paid, who hasn't. But if payments are coming in at all different moments, uh,
Yeah.
it also can be more work. And so I think the more you can just build a system around these pieces, um, the better. And I think it goes back to the complexity around it, right?
Yeah, well, I certainly see. I mean, in our case, and in most room rentals, I think owners are including utilities versus standard single family rentals where they aren't, or apartments where they're not typically providing those. But I mean, I could see a world where just having visibility into utilities alone, just maybe even electrical costs from house to house might be worth comparing. Is that something that you guys run into, or feedback that you get from folks who are running these types of
Yeah, we've built a
room
few
rentals?
things. We've built a few things into this already, where if you have kind of shared expenses that come through, a really easy way to actually go and split that expense across, in this case, different rooms, or different listings that you may have. And so you can actually, very clearly actually go and see, um, you know, what is the P&L of a room, right? Even though it may be part of a,
Sure.
a, a broader property, and be able to actually account for that effectively, right?
And then one
Uh,
room versus another as well. Can you compare?
oh, you can compare one room versus another. You can compare that room against itself over different months and different time periods. You can do all of that.
That'd be
Um,
great. Yeah, because I mean, from our side, we're pretty sophisticated on the income side of things, but really we know very little about the expenses for most of
yeah.
our hosts.
And most
Uh,
people also just focus on, like, the kind of cash expenses, but what about, like, depreciation, right? How are you depreciating assets that that they're part of your property that you're actually renting out. And so we have a pretty sophisticated tool where you can actually go and create different depreciation schedules for different parts of your home.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Imagine you are actually, there's the room that you may live in and the room that you're renting out. Obviously, the room that you're renting out is depreciating quicker, right? It's wear and tear and so forth. And so you can go and create different depreciation schedules and make sure that that's flowing into your tax reports, because that means you're paying
Interesting.
going to be paying less taxes, right? So
Yeah.
little things.
I might disagree though, Matthias. I
Okay.
have 4 sons, and so the rooms that we live in are probably depreciating much more quickly than the room that I rented out
Okay.
here in my house. But I understand the concept. I mean,
Yeah.
and even to go down another level. So if I put in a refrigerator, for instance, in the room that I'm
Yeah.
renting, it sounds like I would have the ability to put that on a different
100%.
depreciation schedule.
Yes.
And
100%. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. You
that's
can add
wild.
you can add any asset, you can add any liability, and obviously across the assets you can put different depreciation schedules. We provide some education across things that you can accelerate, things that you can't, so you have some guidance, and a few partners as well that can help you with cost segregation studies if you want to go deeper into it, embed
Yep.
that study obviously into into all of this. So yeah, there's quite a lot there.
I'm assuming that there are a number of PadSplit hosts that are
Yep.
using Baselane. But whether it's PadSplit hosts or even just your normal consumers, uh, uh, what are some of the outcomes? Like, I'm curious to know the feedback that you get from these customers. If you guys track anything quantitatively, or if you've just got maybe an interesting tidbit or two from a story of someone who's transitioned
Yeah, I mean, I think one of
to Baselane.
one of the most interesting kind of stats that has surprised us is how customers grow on our platform. And obviously, growing a real estate portfolio is takes effort, it takes time, finding the right deals, finding financing. It's not something that happens overnight, but we see that across 2 years, the average customer is more than doubling the amount of rent and income that is coming into their bank accounts across 2 years.
You mean they're doubling the amount of income,
Yeah,
even within the same portfolio, or because they
with,
expand?
within the same portfolio. And so
Wow.
when we
Okay.
see it, someone comes into Baselane and they may have 4 or 5 doors. If we look at those customers, 2 years from when they started with
Yep.
Baselane, and we see that on average they've roughly doubled.
Mm.
And one of the things that we've tried to reposition Baselane recently is like really we're trying to drive confidence, right? What are the main things that are inhibiting you from actually growing your portfolio? Yes, there is obviously time, there is capital, but a lot of it is actually just
Sure.
confidence. Like, is this allocation of capital that I put here actually returning what I want it to return? Is it moving towards the outcome that I want to achieve? And if we're able to provide clarity on that, and you have understanding of kind of where your dollars are sitting, how they're performing, then you have confidence to go and do more, right? And so like our view is that no longer is the limitation, the capital and the opportunities. Like, yes, that'll take time to figure out. Like, there'll always be them, but if you have the confidence, you'll be able to go achieve that.
Got it.
And so that for us has been, an incredible part of this
Yeah.
journey, is seeing
That's pretty impressive.
how customers grow with us. Now, obviously, Baselane in itself is when you come to Baselane, like maybe it attracts customers that are in that more mindset of growth versus the customer that is, the investor that is less focused on growth, right? If someone has a few properties and that's all they want, maybe Baselane isn't what they're coming to immediately. But if you're wanting to grow, like, you need a system that's going to enable you to get there, right? And
Sure.
so there definitely is that bias, but I think we've definitely done a good job helping these customers grow and helping them
Well, it sounds like it.
be
Yeah.
confident.
Yeah. 2x net operating income's not insignificant at all. So if you're advising somebody that's like brand new,
Yeah.
let's say they're PadSplit host, someone
Mhm.
just getting started, what are your recommendations for how they set up their financial stack from
Yeah.
day one?
Yeah. I always say that the kind of center of gravity of your financial stack is where your money sits. And that's like the bank account, right?
Sure.
That is the source of truth of all your finances, right? Like where the money sits. And so being able to organize that and have a system that comes off of that is super important. And so with Baselane Banking, you're going to come and open up, an account for that property. We'll open up a profit account, kind of maybe a cash flow buffer if you're kind of, in doing rooms, maybe a savings account for you. Then the accounting stack is built directly into it. So as every transaction comes into it, it'll automatically tag to the right transaction. So we're setting you up from a solid base, in an automated ledger from day one. And you can obviously go and start building, custom rules, adding custom categories to the transactions if you want. So it's really customized to what you need. But you're going to have like full P&L visibility from day one. Your tax report, the first rental income that comes in, you're going to be able to see your tax liability coming through. So you have a view of what your tax liability will be by end of year, and it's live, right? And
Wow.
so
That's
that's super important for us, right? And I think there's tons of embedded education as the customer starts on Baselane, especially customers that are just getting started on the real estate journey, to help them understand. Our customers aren't CPAs, right? They're investors, and so
It sounds fair.
how do folks understand the importance of depreciation, the importance of understanding their balance sheet, what the difference is between cash flow and actual profit, right? Sometimes there's all these underlying costs that aren't accounted for because they're not attributed directly to the property, but they should be in some ways in an accurate way, so you actually know what your return is.
So I imagine though, it's got to be a lot easier to start from scratch than it is to convert
Yes.
something like the mess that I'm sitting on right now.
Yeah.
So, uh, what's a realistic time frame for converting, and how many hours do you need from the customer just to kind of get things sent over to Baselane, assuming that they're
Yeah.
using a different system? How do you guys handle that?
I mean, there's a few ways that we can ingest data. One is we can just connect your existing bank accounts. We pull 2 years of transaction data from your bank accounts. And actually within 5 minutes, 95% of those transactions will be tagged already.
Okay, so you guys just use like a Plaid integration to
Yeah, a Plaid
kind of-
integration will pull that, and that's a good way of bringing in kind of like legacy, transactions. Obviously, it's a good time to start is kind of at the start of the tax year. So, you don't necessarily have to go and, cleanly manage everything that's,
Sure.
for the past year, but let's say we start January 1st. So you can do a Plaid integration. We also ingest CSV files. We have a really clean way of, exporting from different tax tools and then actually just ingesting that data with all the different categorizations directly into Baselane. So we have like very clear instructions if you want to export it, from a QuickBooks, you're exporting from different tools, how we can ingest that data, into Baselane with just one upload.
Got it. That's awesome. Well, so, I mean, it sounds like you guys have already come a long way. I mean, give me an idea, just whether it's Baselane
Yeah.
or the future of real estate investing, property management generally. What do you see the role for technology, automation, and for you guys specifically,
Yeah.
especially as you think about this majority of the pool that are these smaller mom and pop investors?
No, I appreciate that question. I think of the world in kind of 3 different chapters. There's like the chapter of like utility, which is, a lot of software out there. They're solving a specific utility, a lot of PMS tools if you think about today. The next phase is like the automation, right? And this has been starting to happen quite a bit, but I think with AI, there's even more automation that can happen in a much more efficient manner. And so this is back to like saving you time. Doesn't mean losing control, right? Just because something is being done for you doesn't mean that you don't have full control over it.
Sure.
And so you can still log in, from 5 minutes, get a recap of all the transactions we've tagged for you. You can verify them. You can see, how your reports have been automatically created for you. All that is there. And then I think the third chapter is really kind of the insights and actions. And so I think in our vision, like we really want to have almost like a CFO in your pocket, right? We want to be able to power every real estate investor with a highly competent professional CFO that is giving them insights into different things, whether, hey, you can increase, your rent or your room charge. You can cut some costs here because other like real estate investors in your area are actually having far less expenses across this type of expense category. Or how do you optimize taxes? Or it looks like you haven't done any depreciation for, these new CapEx that you've put into the, right? So different things that are actually, proactively suggesting recommendations to optimize the way you manage your real estate. Or if you have a property that
Very cool.
we think is not performing well, like let's think about, where you can actually put those dollars into a property that may be performing better.
I like that as the tagline. Your automated CFO or CFO in your pocket.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, yeah, let's finish up with some rapid fire here. Mathias. So trying to answer in one sentence. What is a daily habit that you can't miss?
So every morning at 7:30 in the morning, I have a coffee machine that turns on automatically. And it's between my girlfriend and I who races there first to start making coffee in the morning. Um, so that's an important ritual.
I suspect with your experience, Mathias, you could probably automate 2 coffee machines
Yeah.
at the same time and
Yeah,
not race.
I live in New York, so space is the issue.
10-4. What are you currently reading or watching?
I was gifted a book that's called 38 Letters from Rockefeller to His Son, and
Ah,
and
I know this book.
and it's a pretty interesting book that kind of there's a lot of cool themes. Like, it talks about
Yeah,
like hard work, resilience. There's one theme which I love. It's like luck is planned. Like, a lot of people talk about how luck lands in their lap. He's like,
sure.
no, I planned for that to happen. But yeah, just a very, very kind of very ambitious individual, quite humbling, to listen to and read. Yeah.
Indeed, Titan. What's one financial mistake that you see real estate investors make over and over and over again?
Hmm. I would say, failing to treat your property like a proper business, and actually, think about its P&L, right? Make sure you have accurate accounting. Don't let the blind spots, like, a CapEx investment or miscalculating the true cost of operating a business, sneak out, right? This is a business.
Yeah. Or value your time.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That's the one that I see people make over and over and over. If you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing about the U.S. housing system, what would it
Hmm.
be?
Since I live in New York, I'll take a New York view to this. I think there's way too much regulation that just creates bottlenecks and like crazy imbalances in the housing system. And you see it so clearly in New York, where there's just crazy regulation where, uh, it just doesn't create enough supply. And, I think
Sure.
the average American takes a huge toll from that in the cost of renting.
Preaching to the choir there, my friend. Well, Mathias, thank you for joining us. This has been great, and the work you're doing to bring better financial tools and the CFO in your pocket to real estate investors and operators is really a benefit for us all. And for our listeners, you can learn more about Baselane at baselane.com. Connect with Mathias on his LinkedIn. We'll include those links in the show notes. And be sure to subscribe to One Room at a Time wherever you listen or watch, and tell us who we should talk to next. You can see all the episodes at padsplit.com/podcast. And thanks for tuning in to One Room at a Time.